Welcome back to Black News Tonight. While many people applauded NFL coach Jon Gruden's decision to resign, others called out cancel culture, saying that this was not necessary given the context. One of those people is the GOP strategist and political commentator, Melik Abdul. Melik, it's good to see you. Welcome back to Black News Tonight, as always. You're going to have to explain this one to me. Jon Gruden was caught through email saying stuff that many of us, myself included, think was racist, homophobic, misogynistic, etc. Why should he not be forced to resign, if not be fired?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me back, and I'm glad you're back and healthy with the perfect dimple in your tie. So, as far as Jon Gruden's concerned, I'm pretty sure that, I can see people's head exploding, right now that, oh, my goodness, here he is. He's, there you go, putting on the cake for a white man. But that's not really it at all. When it comes to this idea of who should be canceled or resigned or fired from situations like this, I'm pretty consistent. When DaBaby made his comments that many found offensive, I didn't cancel him because, first of all, I know that, Gucci Pico is one of my favorite songs of DaBaby. That's not going to change. I still like he and Moneybagg Yo. That's just my thing. So I really don't do the because someone says something that many may find offensive or anything like that, then the immediate step that they should take is to resign or cancel them. I understand from a business perspective, really what they're doing is protecting their bottom line. In Gruden's case, I think I would feel differently if he made those comments directly towards the offending group, if you will. If he made those comments towards gay people or women or things like that. We don't know if that's happened at this point because we're really just talking about emails. But am I going to sit here and act as if I haven't been in rooms with men who, when Michael Sam was joining the league, they looked sideways at the idea that a gay guy was joining the NFL? Have I been in rooms with men who've made misogynistic remarks when it comes to women, whether that's in professional sports or even broadcasting from, the sidelines? Yes, I've been in these rooms. I know men who make these, similar remarks. Now, true, they're not an NFL coach or anything like that, but I wouldn't hold them to a standard. I don't hold Gruden to a standard that I wouldn't hold my own friends and people that I know who make these type of remarks themselves. So when I say that I don't think that he should have been forced to resign, yeah, I get the bottom line argument because the NFL got to do what the NFL got to do. Any business has to do that. But I'm consistent when it comes to these type of offensive remarks. And so that's why I put it in that context as opposed to just saying, he didn't say anything that was offensive or anything.
So I agree that you're consistent. With all due respect, I think you're consistently wrong on this issue. Every time. I mean, it's impressive. There's a way that you are holding your friends and Jon Gruden accountable in the same way. I think that's the right way to think about this. If your homeboy's sitting with you at the bar and y'all are talking and he says something misogynistic, he's not in a position of power. And so all you can do is say, that's ignorant. Or I don't want to be friends with you. I personally don't want to be friends with people who say things that are homophobic or sexist or misogynistic, etc. Jon Gruden, however, is in a position of power. If Jon Gruden were just sitting at the bar talking, I wouldn't want to impinge on his right to say ignorant stuff. If he happens to get punched in the face for saying something racist, not by me, but by some random spirit of Ogun, that'd be that's different. But fundamentally, he has a right to say it. He just says, I just don't want to put him in a position of power. You raise the idea that it's not like he said it to the people directly. That's part of the problem. That's how white supremacy operates, right? A university president, for example, that says, I think black students aren't as smart. I think that women shouldn't be professors. If I found out that they were saying that every day, even if they never said it to women or black people, it would be alarming to me. In fact, it'd be more alarming because that might inform their decision of when to hire one or when to admit one as a student. So the harm that they can cause in that position of power isn't reducible to whether they say it directly or not. It's almost like by that argument, the argument you're making, we would be rewarding them for being cowards and not saying it to their face. But more fundamentally with Jon Gruden, you're talking about somebody who has the power to influence who gets drafted, who has the power to influence who's going to be on his staff, who has the power to shape league policy. And if he doesn't think women should be refs, if he doesn't think gay people should be football players, right? And if he objectifies women across the board and says homophobic things across the board, if he's talking about black people's lips, right? And he also doesn't think that NFL players should be protected from concussions as much as they are. I mean, these are power positions. I don't want a coach that doesn't think that my head should be protected from concussions. I don't want a coach that's making fun of my body in white supremacist terms. I mean, take the bottom line off the table for a minute, because you say this is about money. Let's say, and I don't disagree, white folk often are motivated by those interests and not by genuine feelings. I'm with you. Businesses, corporations, governments, they're often animated by those same sentiments. I'm with you. But take money off the table for a minute. Isn't it just the right thing to do?
Yeah, well, that ultimately it was Gruden's and the NFL's decision to actually do that. But I'm actually glad that you made the university point there, because I think it was probably earlier in the year. I'm sure you remember the Georgetown Law professor who made the comments. It was in a Zoom meeting that was ultimately leaked, where she talked about that the black students in her class have always been at the lower end. They've always performed at a lower end. I actually wrote an article about that in the Washington Examiner, and what I did, I tried to unpack that. It's one thing to make the comments, and even to your Gruden point, it's one thing to make the comments, but is there a history where that person has acted on whatever those type of biases are? Which was the same point that I made in the article. The professor who was ultimately fired, she had been at Georgetown Law, I think, for about 20 years. Was there a history of her discriminating or grading her, her students, or not advising them in a way that was harmful or had a negative impact on black people? I think that is a substantive discussion to actually have. Far as I know, there wasn't any history attached to that. That's not to say that her comments weren't offensive or anything like that. And in the same case with Gruden, he's been around for a while. Is there a history of him being discriminatory towards black people? Is there a history of him being discriminating against gays, or whatever the case may be? I think that is a valid conversation to have. If there's no history from it, that doesn't mean that he shouldn't be held to account for the comments that he's made. But if the argument is that he made some offensive comments, but there was no actions actually tied to it where he acted on whatever those prejudices were, for me, I just think it's a different thing. And I actually will use you as an example, your experience at CNN. I'm pretty sure that when I get off this show and I share this, just like I share everything else that of yours when I'm on the show, conservatives typically say, I don't know how you can even go on Marc Lamont Hill's show because of what he said. What I always say is that, well, I don't judge Marc Lamont Hill. For one, there was a lot of context to your comments that people didn't even bother listening to. But I don't judge you because of those comments in a way that a lot of other people do. And what I say to my conservatives all the time, when they bring up you, as they always do, I said, well, and I just had this conversation today when I announced that I was coming on the show. And I even told this, a friend of mine, I said, but you literally just defended Donald Trump when he linked Haitian and AIDS and said that they were bringing AIDS over and it's a danger to the country. So yeah, contradictions in life definitely exist. And sometimes we defend things that are indefensible. But in this case with Gruden, for me, it's important to know whether or not there are actions tied to his offensive comments, because at the end of the day, that is what's really important.
So you made a couple of points. I'm going to respond to one of them. We're going to take a quick break. I think, first of all, any comment I've ever made publicly, I think I should be held accountable for it. I think people should make decisions about it. The difference is I don't hear people making the case that what Gruden said was correct or that Gruden was right. Even people who are defending Gruden are saying, yeah, what he's saying is bad, but the consequences shouldn't be this, that, or the third. With regard to my comments in public, I took a principled stance in defense of Palestinian liberation and Palestinian human rights. And if people disagree with that, then that's part of a spirited debate. That's very different, I think, than a universally accepted objectionable set of comments. But it's totally okay for somebody who has the opposite politics of mine to say, you know what? Mark is not going to advance settler colonialism. Mark's not going to advance Zionism, and so therefore Mark shouldn't be the president of American Zionist Organization because he ain't one, right? That would make sense based on my comments. Similarly, someone who is racist and sexist and homophobic probably shouldn't be overseeing a bunch of black folk and women and some gay folk, right? I mean, it seems like a fairly reasonable, consistent argument. But we're going to come back. We're going to take a break because we're going to continue this conversation because it's an important one. Stay with me, y'all. More Black News Tonight right after this. Welcome back to Black News Tonight. I'm talking to Melik Abdul about the Jon Gruden firing. Also worth noting, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers also just announced that they were going to remove Gruden from their Hall of Rings. It's basically like a Hall of Fame for the team because of his comments and their desire to distance themselves from it. Melik, you made a comment before we went to break, which was an interesting one. You said, you know, there's no history of Jon Gruden actually acting on the things that he said. If you say something racist in emails or sexist in emails, but there's no proof of you treating people differently, then you shouldn't be punished for it. How convinced are you that it's possible to be someone who says racist things and homophobic things, but not act on it? In other words, if you knew that someone were a white supremacist and they showed it in their emails, they showed it in their artwork, they wrote it in their diary, would you feel comfortable hiring that person? Would you feel comfortable that it's possible that they could treat people equally?
No, and it definitely, for me, it will depend on what position I'm actually hiring them for. As someone who knows homophobic people that I associate with sexist people, yeah. So I may not put them in a diversity inclusion and in charge of diversity and inclusion or something like that. But I'll use even another example, Joy-Ann Reid. She has a history of running a blog where there were plenty of homophobic comments. Not only was her blog a host for these homophobic comments and making comments about heterosexual men who were not gay, she actually denied it. She said that she was hacked. Not only was she forgiven, she's given a primetime show on MSNBC. Does she have a history of being homophobic, or acting against homophobes or, people who are homosexual? I don't know. But even in Joy-Ann Reid's case, I didn't think that Joy-Ann Reid should have been canceled or should have been removed from MSNBC because, as we found out, she had a history of homophobic comments that on the blog that she ran. And I also think time matters. Now, obviously, making racist or homophobic or misogynistic comments, it doesn't matter at what period of time that you make it, offensive comments are offensive comments. But I think there's a distinction to be made between making comments last year as opposed to, I think some of the comments for Gruden were going back to 2011. That's a long time ago. And not to excuse or to even make an excuse for the fact that he made the comments, but I do think that time actually matters. And so if we were able to go back in time and pull out comments like they did with Joy-Ann Reid that people made many years ago and just say, okay, well, because you made these comments when you were working at a different job, that somehow you can't be employed at this place or the other. I just don't agree with that overall. So it's not just a Jay Gruden thing. It's not a white supremacy thing or a homophobia thing. This is just my view when it comes to people being removed from positions because of things they may have said in the past. Isaiah Washington. I didn't think that Isaiah Washington should have been fired from Grey's Anatomy because of the comments that he made. But I understand at the end of the day, Shonda Rhimes and whatever crew had to do what they had to do. I just didn't think that someone like Isaiah Washington should have been fired for the comments that he made.
Yeah. So just to be clear, Jon Gruden's comments, you say they go back to 2011, but they consistently are tracked up to 2018, right? I mean, it's not like they stopped in 2011. 2018 was 2.5 years ago, and there's no reason to believe that they stopped in 2018. Gruden's not even saying that they stopped in 2018, But by your argument, there's nothing that anyone could write or say that would make you unwilling to hire them or willing to fire them. You said that you wouldn't put somebody in charge of diversity and inclusion if they had troublesome ideas around race or gender. I hear you, but That's exactly what an NFL football coach has to do. It's a white man in a league that's it's about, what, 70% black, right? Hiring people, coaches, assistant coaches, trainers. You have to hire a diverse crew of people. If you don't think women can be refs, you probably don't think women can be coaches. And if you don't think a woman can be a ref or a coach, can you adequately hire? If you think that black people, or forget black people, if you think football players in general shouldn't be protected from concussions, right? That's a very concrete thing. I think the commissioner should stop trying to increase protections over concussions. My job as a coach is to protect your body. You literally have to follow my directions. I'm running plays to protect your body, and I don't think that you should be protected from concussions. I don't care if you get a concussion. That seems to me to be an actual physical danger and risk. And you could say, well, there's no proof of it. Most things don't get proven, right? When you don't get the job, Melik Abdul, because your name is Melik Abdul, they don't tell you it's because your name is Melik Abdul. They say someone else is more qualified, even if they got the same resume and their name is John Smith. They may not tell you, yo, I don't care about your brain, run, Negro, run. But what they do is they keep running that run play through a heavy line, even when it's unnecessary, right? It's often intangible. It's subjective. And because we have evidence, I don't understand why we would commit to not firing, commit to protecting a white man or any person who has a history of being so objectionable and so bigoted and so biased, man. I just don't get it. But you make a good argument. You got to come back, man, because like I know you said you don't be caping for white people, and I think you be caping for bad ideas. I don't think it's particular to white people. So we go battle this thing out one more time. Come back next week, man. I'm going to find something else to fight with you about, all right?